are the God, you know my every thought, and you know my ways, the path on which I walk, and you know me better than I know myself. You've known me longer than anyone else. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, and I can't even understand it. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. I can't even comprehend it, but I know you see. Oh, this I know you see. I could walk where men may never tread, or plunge the depths where I could make my bed. But I never went hide and seek. You're so good at finding me, only lost in the mystery of the depth of your love for me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, and I can't even understand it. Such knowledge is too wonderful. Oh, and I can't even comprehend it, but I know you see. Oh, this I know you see. And even where my world is shaking, Lord, your hand will hold me still. Even where my world is shaking, your hand will hold me still. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Hello, beautiful people! Tudo bom, Arthur? Hello!
Tudo bem? Oi, gente. Que bom estar aqui de novo. Feliz sábado.
Happy Saturday for all. Feliz sábado. Que bom estarmos juntos mais uma vez e dessa vez estudando uma lição maravilhosa. Vocês vão ver aqui, ó, Law and Grace. One wonderful lesson. Pessoal, estou muito feliz de poder estarmos juntos mais uma vez. Daqui a pouquinho a gente vai bater um papo aqui sobre essa lição incrível. Nós temos alguns convidados aqui, não puderam estar presentes ao vivo, mas eles enviaram um vídeo, nós vamos bater um papo daqui a pouquinho. Arthur, preparado? Vamos fazer uma oração para a gente começar?
Preparado, vamos sim.
Então vamos lá. Eu vou orar então. Oremos então. Querido Deus, obrigado por mais esse dia. Pedimos que, neste momento, ao revisarmos a sua lição, nós tenhamos a tua bênção, a tua iluminação. É o que pedimos em nome de Jesus. Amém. Let's go! Are you ready to talk in English, to listen English, to learn English? So, thank you very much. Let me see. Dona Zilma, feliz sábado, que Deus abençoe nossa família adventista. Obrigado, Dona Zilma, para você também. Happy Saturday. May God bless your family too. E olha quem tá mandando um feliz sábado aí, Arthur. Olha aí, ó. Tia Amália. Que bom, tia Amália.
Feliz sábado, tia.
Obrigado. Happy Saturday. Obrigado, tia Amália. E olha quem chegou aí, ó. Aí sim, hein? Mirelle, que bom. Fico feliz, Mirelle. Feliz sábado. Thank you very much. Muito bom. Opa, tem mais gente chegando aqui. Tem a... Deixa eu ver se eu acertei aqui, ó. Carlene Matos. Que bom, Carlene. Feliz sábado. Se eu errei aí o nome, escreve no chat aí que daqui a pouquinho eu vou pedir desculpas. Eu vou falar com todo mundo. Arthur, olha quem chegou, Arthur. A Dona Eva. E obrigado, Dona Eva. Olha aí, ó. Dona Eva tá com esse nome Kiko, porque é do filho, mas a Dona Eva é uma mãe aqui pra gente. Pô, Dona Eva, você é muito querida. Isso aí, ó. Eu acho que eu acertei. A Carlene tá dizendo que eu acertei o nome dela. E ó, quem chegou aí, a vó Odete. Ê, finalmente, a vó Odete chegou. Que beleza. E a Mirelle está muito feliz. Olha, ela está felicíssima, mandando todos esses risadinhos aí. Que bom, Mirelle. Everyone are very welcome. Let's study our lesson, Law and Grace. Please let me read and translate at the same time. Many scholars of Bible ask about the right relationship between the law and grace. Grace is rightly defined as undeserved mercy, a kind of gift, a free gift that God has given to save the sinner. The love of God is like a precious point, a precious treasure that offers a guarantee of the relationship between the harmony of his government and the prosperity of all the universe and the well-being of all mankind. In many passages of Deuteronomy, the Lord, God of Israel, is presented, is shown as our lawmaker. Wow, very interesting, this introduction, right? And I like to... Carliene. Ok, Carliene. Carliene, obrigado aí por ter escrito, agora acertei, hein? Escreve de onde você é, Carliene. Qual é a sua cidade? Tá? Escreve pra gente aí, pra gente mandar um abraço para você. Eu sei que a Mirelle tá lá no ABC Paulista. A Dona Odete, a minha querida mãe, vó do Arthur, está em Londrina. Olha aí, ó. Meus tesouros. É marmelada, né? Valeu! E a dona Eva também. Aí, ó, Eva é só amor hoje, hein, Arthur? Aí, ó, que beleza, olha que alegria. Muito bem. Vamos lá, continuando, hein? About the introduction Sabbath lesson, I like to share my display one note that I prepare for you. All right. Law and grace. This is an important thing. Law and grace. Let's read the memory text. Galatians chapter 2 and 21, verse 21. I will read. I do not set aside the grace of God, for if righteousness comes through the law, then Christ died in vain. So this interesting point in this letter of Paul to Galatians, because he points to the correct relationship between the law and grace, and what are the right functions of both, right? And continuing this, let's read this text. Even if expressed in different ways and in various scenarios, the theme of law and grace certainly is found all through the Bible. The law is God's standard of holiness and righteousness, and violation of that law is sin. Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. In Portuguese, todo aquele que comete pecado comete iniquidade, e pecado é iniquidade. 1 John chapter 3 verse 4. So, Dona Odete, Dona Eva, vocês estão entendendo? Ah, sim. Faltou aqui, ó. A tia Malha está em São Paulo. Ei, muito bom, tia Malha. Que bom. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much. Está acompanhando, tia Malha? Escreve aí que você está entendendo tudo. Beleza? Pode escrever aí, pessoal. Obrigado, viu, tia Malha? Obrigado vocês. Vamos continuar. Estamos na introdução da lição e a gente está variando aqui. Vocês estão percebendo que eu estou colocando um texto para a gente refletir com mais tranquilidade, né? Então, vocês estão vendo aí, nesse segundo parágrafo está escrito ali, ó, The law is God's standard of holiness and righteousness. Então, a lei é o padrão de Deus de santidade e justiça. Tá bom? Vamos continuar aqui. Tem mais coisinha aqui para a gente ver no slide, nas nossas notas. Deuteronomy presents the relationship between law and grace, but in a unique context. So, in this brief, simple introduction, remember, we are studying in this quarter the book of Deuteronomy, and the next quarter is the book of Hebrews, right? So, here the book of Deuteronomy. Well, in Portuguese, so vamos parar aqui um pouquinho. Deixa eu arrumar a minha luz aqui só um pouquinho, pessoal. Aguenta aí. Vai. Nossa, agora ficou bom, hein? Ok. A tia Malha diz que está perfect. Eu não sei se a gente está perfect ou ela está perfect, mas obrigado, tia Malha. Thank you very much. So in Sunday's lesson, after the simple introduction and the read of memory text in Galatians chapter 2, is very interesting to meditate, right, about the law and grace, because one thought very interesting is that the law was given by God only for mankind. This is right or not so right? This is wrong. Well, this is Sunday's lesson opens our lesson. Answer this question. Em português, a lição de domingo ela já responde se a lei de Deus ela foi dada apenas para a humanidade. Are you ready? So I'd like to share another display about the Sunday's lesson. Law in heaven. Let's read. The appearance of sin in heaven makes us understand that the law already existed. Where there is no law, there is no sin. This is wrote in Romans chapter 4 and verse 15. 2. Unwieldedness to the law reveals enmity, right? This is written in Romans chapter 8, verse 7. Third point, the knowledge of sin proceeds from the law. This is written in Romans chapter 7:7. So, continuing, the word iniquity or lawlessness comes from the Greek anomie, which means transgression of the law. The word commerce used in Ezekiel 28 is recular, which can be translated as politics. That is, Satan campaigned politically in heaven. Em português, esta lição de domingo, vamos tentar aqui falar um pouquinho que a lei de Deus ela existe no céu e ele vai dar 3 motivos bíblicos. O primeiro motivo bíblico, onde não existe lei, não existe pecado. Está em Romanos 4:15. O segundo ponto fala sobre a insubordinação ou insubmissão à lei, e isso revela inimizade. O terceiro ponto é que o conhecimento do pecado procede da lei. Então, para haver organização e justiça no céu, é necessário haver a lei. Ok? So this is very nice. I'd like to stop our sharing. Let me see. All right. Arthur, it's okay? Any doubt, any commentary about it?
No, I just think it's well, everything was very clear, but I think it's very interesting how little we think about that, right? If Satan sinned before being expelled from heaven, that means that there was some law, some commandment, some regulation, or whatever that he could break, and yeah, that's actually very interesting.
Right. And you remember me about the Romans chapter 7 and verse 7. Paul wrote, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? Certainly not. On the contrary, I would not have no sin except through the law. For I would not have no covetousness unless the law had said, you shall not covet. So the purpose of law is not only show the consequences or the penalty of our sin, but the character, the love, the point, the very intention of will of God, right? Thank you very much. Em português, vocês entenderam que lá no céu é necessário ter este ponto de lei para organização e justiça, ok? E eu li aqui, o Arthur também comentou que a lei é necessária, não apenas para nós, mas para todo o contexto de criação, para as demais criaturas. E ao menos o apóstolo Paulo escreveu que sem o conhecimento da lei eu não saberia o que é cobiça, né? Como é que eu saberia, né? Se a lei não me ajudasse nesse sentido. Well, I like to invite Emily. Emily sent a little video for me, and I like to share with you because Emily will talk about the Monday's lesson, Law in Deuteronomy, right? Are you ready?
Guys, this is Emily again. Happy Sabbath. And today I'm talking about Monday's lesson, which has a title I like so much, Law in Deuteronomy, but it's also about grace too. The people were finally about to enter the promised land, and before that, Moses gave them his final instructions. That's how the law is placed in Deuteronomy as Moses' final advice to the people before they get into the promised land. And reading Deuteronomy, we can see how a strict obedience to the law was important to Israel, how they had a healthy lifestyle when their life was according to the law, and we realize that obedience was and has always been for their own good, their own benefit, what they didn't deserve, what we don't deserve, but that's what grace is about. From this perspective, God has shown grace by teaching them to obey. And it's not different now. We're saved by the grace. Romans chapter 3 verse 28 says, "Therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith apart from the deeds of the law." So the obedience to the law is our response to God's love, but it's also our blessing because when we live through obedience, when our plans, our thoughts are according to God's law, we experience a peaceful living. We have a healthy and a happy lifestyle. Deuteronomy is not only a book of laws and rules, but also a lesson about grace. By grace we were redeemed, and our lives are blessed by obedience because of grace. Despite that, we who live nowadays in times of trouble, close to the end of times and close to the mark of the beast time, we are depicted as those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Law and grace had always been and are always going to be connected. God's grace saves us and enables us to obey His law. We avoid legalism as we obey the law by remembering that obedience comes from our covenant relationship with Him. It doesn't come from us. He teaches us how to obey in a love act to help us to have a meaningful life.
Wow, thank you very much, Emily. So nice. Em português, a lição que a Emily pegou, a lição de segunda-feira, ela é riquíssima. Se você puder dar uma lida, estudada, se você ainda não leu, é muito boa. E a Emily, então, ela comentou sobre alguns pontos, né, que Moisés, né, pertinho ali de Canaã, prontos ali para poder conquistar essa terra prometida, ele se reúne, então, com o povo, e Deuteronômio fala sobre isso. E a parte final, o último parágrafo, é muito bom. Então, algumas lições aqui em inglês. Ó. Object lessons. Pode ser lições práticas ou lições didáticas, alguma coisa nesse sentido, tá? Mais objetivas. By grace, God redeems us. God's grace forgives us. God's grace enables us to obey His law. So the grace is the key point, in this Monday's lesson, right? Em português. Olha aí, a Dona Eva já fez um comentário bonito aqui, hein? Quero ver quem é que vai fazer outros comentários aí. Dona Eva escreveu aí, ó, por amor a seu povo, Deus deu-lhe a sua lei, e a obediência a ela resultaria no bem dele. E se obedecermos, seremos salvos. Ó, aí a Dona Eva já mandou ver, resolvida a questão. E ela mandou um beijinho aí, um abraço para a Emily. Obrigado, Dona Eva. Thank you very much. Valeu. Que se vocês quiserem, escreve aí no chat, daqui a pouquinho a gente vai interagir com vocês, tá bom? Well, Next lesson, Tuesday's lesson, Letov Lak, for your good. I think that Arthur is the guy for this lesson. I'm okay? I'm right, Arthur? Arthur?
Yes, yes, you are.
All right.
Tuesday's
So,
lesson is pretty cool. Well, it's called Letovlak, as you said. It's a Hebrew sentence expression that translates as "for your own good." Uh, we know that by many people who don't believe in God and or in the Bible as His word, God is portrayed as a monster or a tyrant or something, I don't know, too evil or something like that. To some, the God from the Old Testament is just too harsh, is just too vindictive to have anything to do with the Jesus from the New Testament, which is a shame, actually, because diving in to take a closer look at the scriptures, we find that in the Old Testament, God is constantly, over and over and over and over again, portrayed actually as a God of mercy, as a God of love, as a God of care. And this Tuesday's lesson shows us a little bit about that. Let's read Deuteronomy 10, verses 12 and 13. It says, uh, this is Moses talking, by the way. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you, but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to observe the Lord's commands and decrees that I'm giving you today for your own good. So in Hebrew, in the original, all those words for you or your, those that are in green now, they are actually in singular form. God, through Moses, as we said, is talking, well, to the people of Israel, to all the children of Israel, a lot of people, but he's also talking to each one of them individually. It's a personal talk. Because how could God lead his nation as a whole if every individual didn't play his part correctly? As we read, God gives us his commandments for our own good, so that the nation could enjoy this good. So that this nation could only enjoy this good if they were all in the same rhythm, if they were all in the same timing. And to God, that is his commandments. That's why he gave us the law, so we can understand which way to go and how to deal with things. Let's also read the next two verses. It says, "To the Lord your God belong the heavens, even in the highest heavens, the earth and everything in it. Yet the Lord set his affection on your ancestors and loved them. And he chose you, their descendants, above all the nations, as it is today." God, in the end, if we do the math, God doesn't really need us. He doesn't need us for anything. Everything already belongs to him, and he's already almighty, all powerful. But still, he wants to be near. He wants to show affection, love. He chooses us. He calls us. And that's how it goes ever since the Old Testament. That of course, that has everything to do with Jesus. But it's a great fallacy. It's a great lie to say that the God from the Old Testament doesn't love or doesn't have any affection or is not merciful. I think the greatest example might be the fact that he chose Israel, and he says this himself, not because they were a great nation, but simply because he did it simply because he did it. He had uh, a friendship with Abraham. He made a covenant with him, and then with his sons and the son of his son, and that's how it happened. It wasn't because Israel did something or Israel was the greatest a nation in Egypt. No, it was just because the Lord, as we read, the Lord set his affection, and because he loved, that's why he chose. And that is Tuesday's lesson.
Thank you very much. Em português. Essa lição de terça, ela tá muito bonita. Provavelmente, a lição de terça-feira seja a lição mais perfumada, a lição mais leve desta semana, porque ela mostra a preocupação de Deus em nos trazer benefícios. Então, a expressão para o seu bem, letov lak, ela tem a ideia de que a lei ela não é pesada. A lei é um lucro. A lei é um investimento que vai nos trazer benefício. E isso é óbvio, também pode ser aplicado à graça, ok? Por quê? Porque a graça é para o nosso bem, é óbvio, não é mesmo? E o Arthur falou muito bem. Arthur, mais algum comentário em português? Tá ok?
Não, eu acho que você fechou bem. É muito legal. Eu gostei muito da lição ter trazido a expressãozinha, né? Levou lá. E é interessante porque a gente nunca pensa, né, que a gente está recebendo ordem para o nosso bem. A gente sempre pensa que é para o bem de quem está mandando. Mas com Deus, e que nem a gente leu, né, que nem a lição de terça-feira fala, com ele não é assim. Ele busca o nosso bem e ele oferece o bem constantemente em tudo que ele faz.
Você lembra que a palavra tov, ela tem a ver com bom, né? Então, depois que acaba o sábado, a gente fala Shavua Tov. Lembra disso? Boa semana. Boa noite também, é Laila Tov. Então, esse Tov tem a ver com coisas boas, tá bom? Aquilo que é bom, tá bom? Aí, quando a gente fala Shabbat Shalom, a gente não usa Tov, a gente usa a expressão como se fosse um feliz sábado, né? Aí o Shalom tem 200 traduções, mas nesse caso é diferente. Ok? Então, quarta-feira, Wednesday Lesson. Eu aprendi com um professor de inglês que a gente não fala Wednesday, a gente já fala meio S direto, Wednesday Lesson. Então me corrijam aí depois o que vocês aprenderam, hein? Eu aprendi assim, ele não é para falar Wednesday, então você usa Wednesday, pronto. Eu vou chamar aqui a Gabi. A Gabi esteve conosco na sexta-feira passada. Ela não pôde estar hoje com a gente, então ela fez um vídeo aqui falando sobre quarta-feira, a slave in Egypt, constant theme in Deuteronomy, right? So, if you want, please type your commentary in our chat. Thank you very much. Gabi.
Again, Gabby, and happy Sabbath. It's really good being with you today. We spoke this week about love and grace, and on Wednesday we talk about the slaves in Egypt. They are a very good example in the Bible about God's grace. They were coming from oppression and they were coming from slavery to a promised land, and they were always being reminded about what God has done for them. The lesson gives us an example when in Deuteronomy 5:6-22, Moses, when he's talking about Sabbath, he's saying that not only we should keep the Sabbath as a memorial of the creation, but also as a memorial of redemption from Egypt. God's grace saved them from Egypt and offered them rest to their works. So now, in response to the grace God gave them, they needed to extend this grace to the others. So that's the point that I was thinking about. When we talk about the grace of God with the grace of God with Israel, um, we are seeing that God did so much because they were so much as well, and they were coming from slavery. This was really big, but we don't need to understand grace only with them. We can see grace of God with us every day. Um, every little detail we can see the grace of God, because I believe that I'm a sinful person and I don't deserve neither one thing or neither half. I don't deserve anything that God gives me. So I can see grace of God when I wake up and when He gives me a second chance. I can see God's grace when He answers my prayers. I can see God's grace when I wake up healthy. So we don't see grace of God only on the slaves in Egypt, but we can see God's grace in every little detail of our lives, right? Um, Another point that the lesson gives us, it's an example in Matthew 18:21-35. Yeah, it is talking about a servant, the parable of the unforgiving servant. So this was a servant that was working, and his master found out that he owed him 10,000 talents. This was very much money in that back then. And he was trying to explain his master that he couldn't afford that time because he had kids, and he had because he had kids, because he had a wife, and he didn't have the money. So please give me more time so I can pay you everything. And he was begging him. So his master understood what he was saying, and he said, okay, I forgive you and you can have more time. But only after this, he the servant who was begging his master for mercy, found out that another servant was owed him some money as well. So the servant did the same thing. He was saying, I can't afford, please give me more time to pay my debt with you. But the servant who was begging for mercy to his master, he couldn't forgive his fellow servant. He said that he should pay, and until he had the money, he would put him in prison. And this is an example about God saying that we need to extend the grace to others. So God is merciful with us. God gives us grace. God forgive us. So we should do this the same with the others. I know that sometimes it is hard because God loves us so much, and sometimes we don't understand His love because we are so sinful. And sometimes I don't know what are you going through, but sometimes we just can't love someone. We just can't understand how he is his brother, how he is your brother, and how you should love him, besides his sins and besides his failures. So this is a test for us, but the lesson brings us this moment to reflect that we should be more graceful to others as God is with us. So keep this on your head this week, this next week, and try to be more merciful, more graceful with others as well. So God is with us. Have a good week, and keep your attention because there is still Friday on the lesson. Okay, bye.
Thank you very much, Gabi. Gabi is so a little nervous, a little bit. She desire a very good week Very nice. After the Sabbath, right? That are beginning right now. So thank you very much. Em português, a dona Eva escreveu: olha, pela sua graça, Deus nos libertou. Tem a ver com a lição, né? Que a Gabi falou. E pede que façamos pelos outros o que ele, pela sua misericórdia, fez por nós. Ó, bonito, hein? Muito legal. Obrigado, dona Eva. E a dona Eva aqui está mandando um abraço aí, um beijo para a Gabi aí, ó, filha mais nova. Que bom, hein? Gostoso, valeu. Olha, eu quero agradecer aqui, nós temos algumas pessoas no Facebook nos assistindo. Temos aqui pelo meu controle, aqui eu consigo ver Marcos André, Isabel, Patrícia Moraes Carvalho, estão ali pelo Face curtindo a gente. E aqui no YouTube eu não consigo ver os nomes, mas nós temos aqui muitas pessoas. Aí algumas saem, outras voltam, outras entram e as pessoas vão vindo. Escreva no chat qual é a sua cidade, onde você está participando. Alguma dúvida, uma pergunta, não tem problema. Ok? Are you ready to next lesson? Thursday lesson, not for your righteousness. Every day I recorded a video, a little video, and I put on, and I placed it in Instagram account. I don't know, there's a proper name, Instagram account. Well, on the Instagram, Revisa aí, right? On the Revisa aí in English every day. Tomorrow, the theme will be the choice, the choose of life. So very nice, right? And in this opportunity, Thursday lesson, Igor recorded a video to share with us. Arthur, are you ready? Igor, please.
Hello everyone, so good to be back. This is the episode 7 of this season, and we are talking about a really important subject. And on Thursday's lesson, we have studied an important aspect that we found when it comes to grace. And we can see that there is a connection between the letter of Romans, Genesis, the history of Abraham, and also Deuteronomy, that is in the central part of the lesson. So, central to all the biblical religion is the theme of justification by faith alone. And the Apostle Paul mentioned that Abraham believed in God and it was counted unto him for righteousness. And throughout the Bible, we can understand that justification by faith is the work of God and lay the glory of man in the dust and doing for man that which is not in his power to do for himself. When we consider who God is and how powerful, lovely, and how mighty he is, in contrast to who we are, we can see how unworthy we are. And we stand before this amazing grace, this amazing act of grace that Jesus did to save us. The act of grace happened at the cross, with Christ, the innocent one, dying for the sins of the guilty, us, the guilty. But this quarter, as I said before, is about, and as we also understood, as we are in the episode 7, this quarter is about Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy. And we see in Deuteronomy chapter 9 that Moses wrote and said to the people of Israel that the conquest of the promised land was also an act of grace. Moses connected these two ideas. And he said that it is not because of your righteousness or your integrity that you are going in to take possession of their land. The Bible says in Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 5. And this idea is repeated in the next verse, verse 6. Understand then that is not because of your righteousness that the Lord your God is giving you this good land to possess. For you are a stiff-necked people. I like this expression, stiff-necked. It's stiff-necked. Sorry, stiff-necked people. It's like stubborn. So when your neck is stiff, your neck is it's so hard and you can't move. So it's stood in the same position, even though is there any people that came to you before you and give you good advices and good ideas, and so you are stiff-necked people. We don't change our mind. When we compare these two ideas from Romans and Deuteronomy, we can understand that is not because our acts that God is going to save us. He's going to save us to do it because of the promise of the everlasting gospel, a promise given to us not according to our works and not according to our disposure, not according to our abilities, but according to his our purpose and grace, which has given to us in Christ Jesus before the time he began. If the promise was given to us before the time began, it certainly couldn't be from our works, because we didn't even exist then. So despite your faults, my faults, your flaws, your stiff necks, the Lord is going to do this wonderful work for you and for me. And thus, as a result, the Lord commands you to obey him and fulfill his laws. The promise already has been given and delivered. Your works, your obedience, even if they were good enough, which they aren't the means of your salvation. They are instead the result. So, the Lord has saved you by grace. Now, with his law written in your heart and his Spirit empowering you, you should go and obey his law.
Thank you very much, Igor. Em português. Olha, essa mensagem de quinta-feira é muito boa, fala sobre justificação pela fé. Quero mandar um oi aqui para o Joel. Ô, Joel, muito obrigado. Thank you very much. Boa noite, pastor Bruno e pastor Arthur ali, ó. Quem diria, já foi promovido aí, Arthur, aí, ó. A paz de Cristo, Joel Guedes de Piabetá, Distrito Fragoso. Joel, um grande líder, viu, Arthur? Aí, lá na sua igreja. E ele escreveu em inglês aqui, ó. Quase acertou aqui, ó. The peace of Christ. Faltou um H aí no Christ. Mas tá bom, a gente entendeu. Thank you very much. Obrigado, Joel. Valeu. E é claro, né? A dona Eva mandou um beijo, um abraço pro Igor. Isso aí, hein, Igor? Depois eu vou mandar um abraço da dona Eva para vocês. Pessoal, estamos terminando, hein? Muito obrigado. A lição de quinta fala sobre justificação pela fé. E a citação de Ellen White é fantástica, muito boa. Acho que o Igor já comentou bem essa lição. So, in Friday's lesson, to complete our lesson, to end in our lesson, I'd like to read the first paragraph, a quote from Ellen White in Review and Herald, November 18. Let me read. The enemy of Christ, who rebel against God's law in heaven, has, as a skilled, trained general, worked with all his power, bringing out one device after another, full of deception, to make of none effect the law of God, the only true detector of sin, the standard of righteousness. Wow. So, the first point that I like to emphasize, the law of God was the target of Satan to destroy it, because a peculiar people, obedient people, is great witnesses, great testimony for God, right? In a positive way. And so the strategy of Satan was to work it, to destroy or to bring non-effect to the law of God. But one kind that caught my attention in the one point that caught my attention in this lesson is the last paragraph. On this paragraph, the author placed the Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 13. Here is the secret. Why? Because think about it. When Jesus, what do you think about what Jesus did for me before my existence? And what Jesus did for me after my existence. So before my existence, Jesus, God, gave the law. After my existence, God, Jesus, fulfilled the law. And so in my eternity, in my whole life, through all the ages, beside Jesus, beside God, I will fulfill the law too. So when God offered the grace for me, what he asks for me to do? In Ecclesiastes chapter 12, I will read, now all has been heard. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. This is the duty of all mankind. Do you understand? It's not only an answer about what God asked for me to do after he gave his grace for me. It's not a simple answer. It's a responsibility. It's a compromise. It's a duty to fear God and obey his commandments. Em português, nessa lição, duas coisas me chamaram a atenção. A estratégia de Satanás em querer derrubar, destruir a lei no céu. E a segunda, Jesus, Deus, fez alguma coisa por mim antes da minha existência, depois da minha existência e durante a eternidade, a minha eternidade, eu vou cumprir essa lei também, porque ela nunca foi anulada. E vem uma resposta, que está em Eclesiastes 12. Então, de tudo que se tem ouvido, a suma é: tema a Deus e guarde os seus mandamentos, pois isto é o dever de todo o homem, de toda a humanidade. Então, não é só uma resposta, não é só uma simples um argumento, é uma responsabilidade, é o meu dever. Arthur, mais um comentário. What do you think about it?
And I think, let's see, what do I think? No, well, it's interesting how we as Christians have the objective to copy Jesus. Our intention is to be like him. But sometimes we only think about the being a nice friend, being someone cool to hang out with, give good advice. But actually, Jesus did a lot of different things too, things that weren't very, very pleasing, maybe, because he knew he had a mission. He knew he had a compromise. He was compromised to his mission. And we as Christians, if we want to copy him, we should be just like that too. We should be compromised. We should understand our place in this covenant and play our role.
Okay, thank you very much. It's so nice, very interesting, right? Em português, o Arthur ele falou, a gente quer seguir o modelo de Cristo sendo um bom amigo, dando bons conselhos, mas a gente tem que se comprometer como Cristo se comprometeu. E aí? Esse é um exemplo muito bom, hein? Muito bom, Arthur. Thank you very much. E para terminar, a dona Eva fez um comentário. Ó, a conclusão é: tema Deus, guarde seus mandamentos, porque esse é o dever de cada pessoa, como a gente fez o comentário em Eclesiastes 12. E a dona Eva terminando dizendo para nos abençoar. Obrigado, Mirelle. Very good lessons this week. Thank you. Thank you for you too. Thank you for your commentary. And please continue with us in the next week, lesson 8. In this lesson 7, half of this quarter, right? Thank you very much. So, Arthur, our famous question. Are you ready?
Yes.
Pessoal, vamos terminar com aquela pergunta famosa. A gente se vê durante a semana no Instagram e no YouTube, tá bom? I study the lesson.
Do you?